Today, we face the most important decision of our lives. What candidate are we going to vote for in the upcoming election for Hypixel Skyblock Mayor? In terms of politics, I don't care which candidate you're voting for because 3 Perk Paul is better than both of them. So recently, Admin's released a Better Mayors update. This changed a lot of the existing mayor perks, gave most mayors a 4th perk, and completely reworked the election system. However, this update also revealed some dark secrets to Hypixel Skyblock's government, but we'll get more into that later. Now, let's talk about the basic update info, a breakdown of each mayor's perks, and a voting guide to help you guys with a much more confusing election process, as well as giving you advice on which mayors that you should be voting for. For a long time, I've been incredibly frustrated with how foolish a lot of Hypixel Skyblock players are when voting for mayors. I mean, why would you vote Paul into office when he's missing his best perk, the +10 dungeon score? It just really makes me mad, and this minister system is frustrating me even more. We should really be more aware of which candidates are better to be mayor, which candidates are better to be minister, and which candidates shouldn't be voted for at all so that they can get more perks. With the new system, the second most voted candidate becomes a minister. Each candidate gets one of their perks highlighted, which is this little star you can see at the election booth, so the runner-up of the election gets one of their perks to still be in effect. Now, this is very important to note that both the mayor and the minister will be out of the next election. This means that the current office holders cannot run in the next election, with the only exception being Diaz's perk long-term investment, where the minister is in office with them and is on the next ballot with all 4 of their perks active. So there are a lot of subtle nuances to the voting process that can really shift things up this election. This new update really complicates these elections, but I want to give you guys some voting advice because I really need your help to vote for the right candidates. So to understand how to vote, we first need to know all the perks that are actually the most important and the ones we care about. More importantly, we need to know some of the finer workings of the election system. So let me break it down. For the election, there's a pool of possible candidates. This pool does not include special mayors or the previous mayor or minister. There is an exception here, but we'll get into that later. This candidates list is shuffled and 5 candidates are randomly selected. Every 8 elections, which is 41 days in real life, a special mayor will replace the 5th candidate. These special mayors will cycle through one by one in the order of Scorpius, Derpy, Jerry, and then Scorpius, Derpy, Jerry, and they repeat this pattern over and over, so we actually know exactly when these mayors will be candidates, and these candidates will always have all of their perks active. But the rest of the candidates' perks are a little more strange. Most candidates now have a set of 4 perks. Paul and Aatrox are too cool for a 4th perk because they're already so great, so they still only have 3. But the candidate will always start with one of these perks. Then, at every following election that they aren't voted into office, the candidate has a 50% chance to gain an extra perk. If the candidate has 3 perks, then they have an 8% chance at each election for their 4th and final perk. After each mayor is elected, then their perks list resets and another one is randomly selected and they're back down to 1 perk. So when electing mayors, we aren't just looking at how many perks they have or which mayor is our favorite, Paul. We are looking at the quality of their perks, what other candidates' perks have to offer, and what minister perks seem that they will be the best. So please allow me to do a thorough breakdown of all the candidates' perks, which ones I think are the best and will make sense as a minister perk, and then I'll give examples on how I would personally vote in certain scenarios, and explain how you can make these critical decisions for yourself each election. So let's run through all the candidates. Aatrox has 3 perks, 25% more Slayer XP, 20% more magic find from Slayer bosses, and halves the price for starting Slayer bosses. Now, I'm a huge fan of the 25% more Slayer XP, and I think that this is the best perk, but another good minister perk could also be the additional magic find, but I personally don't care much about this one. Cole has 4 perks. Mining Fiestas, where you get ×2 ore drops, plus 75% mining wisdom, which is just more mining XP, and the chance to drop refined minerals and glossy gemstones from mining blocks. These items are all used in the new mining related recipes. Plus 60 mining wisdom, so more mining XP, decreases time to forge by 25%, so the forge is just faster, and all mining minions are also 25% faster. Honestly, the Fiesta is the only perk that really matters, but the others are just nice additions to the mayor, but not really worth having as minister perks. And really, Cole just needs the Mining Fiesta to even be worth voting for. Diana has 4 perks, plus 35% pet XP, plus 25 pet luck, so you have a higher chance for higher rarity pets, like drops from dragons, and a better chance to get higher rarity pets from crafts. The mythological ritual is basically allows players to dig up burrows and get all sorts of cool drops from killing these mythological creatures. This is how you get like Inquisitors and Chimera books and stuff. And allowing the new pet EXP sharing system to have an additional 2 more slots and increase the rate of EXP share by 10%. Although the mythological ritual is the only one that people care about and by far the best minister perk, the XP boosts aren't that bad for pets as well. Diaz has 4 perks. We already talked about this one, but the minister that wins with Diaz will show up in the next selection with all of their perks. This also works if Diaz is the minister and this perk is active, so then they'll show up in the next selection with all 4 perks. The next perk gives you the ability to buy 10 times the amount of items from NPCs that have limits. So usually it's 640 items, so then you can buy 100 stacks or 6,400 items every day. The stonks auction and stonks trade, where people basically spend a bunch of coins to buy stonks, and then they use these stonks to get even more expensive things and upgrade their really expensive items. And the volume trading double basically means there's twice as many items at Shen auctions, and twice as many people get each item. So both in the hub and the rift. So there are also 2 Shen special items. The best one is obviously the stonks auction, and I would really also like the volume trading double, but this is just a rich person thing. It's just really not that worth it to have as a minister perk. Finnegan has 4 perks. Blooming Business increases the chance of getting high rarity visitors, gives 10% more copper, and the visitors will get fine flour. This can be used to increase wheat fortune or as a spray to give bonus fortune in the garden. Goated increases Jacob's contest brackets by 10%, so now they look like this. Peltpocalypse increases the pelts from trapping animals by 50%, and brings a pelt shop which has new items to help with pests, and the pest eradicator increases farming fortune buff from Philip, and increases it from 30 minutes to an hour. Honestly, I think these are all great minister perks, and each of them really helps farming, but it's best to have most of them combined with each other so that you can have increased fortune from pests and also more brackets in the farming contest, so they really stack on top of each other well. Foxy has 4 perks. A Time for Giving basically just changes trick-or-treat chests and gives them a party theme so they drop new party items, which also increases the tokens from Foxy's Carnival. Chivalrous Carnival adds a bunch of cool minigames you can play to earn tokens and get cool items and buffs to various other events. Extra Event adds either a fishing, mining, or spooky festival to that year, and Sweet Benevolence just gives 30% more candy, gifts, or chocolate while those corresponding events are active. The only perk that really matters here is the Carnival, so that's the only minister perk that I really care about. Sometimes if you get a good extra event, that might also be worth it as well. Marina has 4 perks. Double Trouble gives 0.1 double hook chance per sea creature chance. This just makes it so you have a chance of catching 2 sea creatures at once. Fishing XP buff gives plus 50% fishing wisdom on public islands. Luck of the Sea 2 just gives an additional 15 sea creature chance. And Fishing Festival schedules a bunch of fishing events where you can catch sharks. Honestly, I don't really recommend Marina as a minister because a lot of her fishing buffs work really well together and you get much better effectiveness out of them. I mean, you could have the fishing events as a perk for minister, but then you don't get the additional sea creature chance and double hook chance, so it's ideal that Marina is just elected mayor instead of being a minister. And last, but certainly not least, Paul. Paul has 3 perks. Benediction, which makes dungeon blessings 25% stronger, Marauders, which makes dungeon chests 20% cheaper, and Easy Peasy, which gives an additional 10 score. The best perk is Easy Peasy. Not only is it a good minister perk, but if Paul doesn't have it, then you really shouldn't even bother voting for him. So now that we have all the mayors and their perks out of the way, let's talk about how you should vote. Basically, when you're voting for a mayor, you typically want to look at the mayors that have the most perks because those are the ones that would be most beneficial for you. And then really it's just a matter of picking the perks that you prefer the most and the directions that you want to go in the gameplay. Now, I already talked about all the perks above for like good minister perks, but really if the mayors don't have those perks, then they're typically not that great to vote for anyways. Some mayors that I feel have the best perks and rotations that are voted for the most are Paul, Aatrox, Diana, Diaz, and like sometimes there's some other one like Marina and Cole are really good for their events, but typically like without these events they're not really that worth voting for. Also, just keep in mind that you really want to be looking at the minister perk, because even if a mayor has good perks, sometimes their individual minister perk might be really good, like Cole's mining fiestas, so you could elect them as minister instead and then have a different candidate for mayor so that they can have more perks available, and that way there are more things to do in the game. Now, I don't really know how governments work, But I think that Skyblock is a democratic republic where we all vote for other people to make our decisions for us, just like America. And in true democratic republic fashion, people with more money have more power. I mean, the people that pay to win get more votes because they have a higher fame rank. Basically, the more bits you spend from booster cookies, the more gems you spent from buying the latest fire sale, account upgrades, or more booster cookies, you'll have a higher fame rank and more voting power. Additionally, the artifacts of control doubles your votes, but this accessory can be pretty expensive, so again, the rich people have more influence and political power. But something doesn't really add up. You know how I said that Skyblock's government is a democratic republic? Well, that's because I'm not a certified forums nerd like Lolamanto is here. He brings up some really good points about Skyblock government functions. You see, the mayors have more depth to them than what meets the eye. There are 8 regular mayors and 3 special mayors. This gives us a total of 11 mayors in the current pool. Now, these mayors are put into a random rotation set up by the clerk, Clerk Seraphine. She runs the elections, and as we know from the garden, she's the one who makes the ballots. This reminds me of a quote from everyone's favorite former dictator, Joseph Stalin. "Those who cast the votes decide nothing. Those who count the votes decide everything." Or, how some people say it, it's not your vote that counts, it's who counts your votes. Now, despite the fact that this quote was probably never actually said by Joseph Stalin, it's still really funny. Thank you, Namibia Fact Check. Either way, the quote still rings true. Clerk Seraphine shows all the power. She puts the candidate on the ballots, counts the ballots, then crowns the new mayor and minister. You see, Seraphine holds all the power in running these elections. Who's to say she isn't hand-picking mayors that give her the most money, skewing the votes, or miscounting in the large number of votes that are cast, transferred, and changes to fame rank during the election? I'm going to need to see her prove her math skills before I trust her running the election. I remember how painful it was having to count votes for my middle school election. Then, someone else had to double check to make sure my counts were right. Then, if there was a discrepancy, we had to recount the set of votes again. Unless she runs the votes through a computer, but there's currently no working redstone anywhere in the community center. But then, I noticed a couple things that were a little strange. Why are we, the community, funding projects for the hub when millions and billions of coins in taxes are being taken from us through the auction house and bazaar? What is this money going to? There's no sort of health systems, welfare, schools, or anything like that. I guess there's a park. Yippee. Unless Seraphine is embezzling all of the money so that she can become the richest entity in Hypixel Skyblock. But we know according to Rift lore that Shen is always the richest across dimension. Seraphine doesn't have a chance. But then, I noticed something else. You see, when you walk into the community center, you see Seraphine at the front desk, then the mayor and minister off to the left. But then we go down to the election area, and we see Seraphine and the mayor again. That doesn't make any sense. How can the same NPC be in 2 places at once? I mean, Jerry does this all the time, but he's like canonically a Skyblock god or something like that. How does Seraphine do this? Unless she's dumping all of the tax money into a privately funded cloning project. You see, all of the mayors have clones. Now it all makes sense. Seraphine used to be the mayor of Hypixel Skyblock. She used to run the entire community herself, but as she gained tax money from the auction house, she gained more authoritative power. She enforced a cap on merchants to sell fewer items and implemented the bazaar to gather more tax. She also restructured the auction house to gather more tax through bin auctions. Despite all of this, Seraphine needed more money to complete the secret cloning project. So she turned to a group of rich people, aka politicians, so that she could promise them cloning if they invested in her cloning endeavors. Finally, when she had enough money, she got the cloning to work. Then she cloned all of the politicians, spent a bunch of her extra funds to revamp the hub, and built a new community center to hold these elections with her investors. Everything was going smoothly until a dictator with a huge army invaded the hub. He found the secret cloning facility and threatened to reveal the secrets to the public. To appease the dictator, Seraphine allowed him to run as mayor. When Dante became mayor, he abused the cloning facility to create endless copies of himself. In true dictator fashion, he made himself the only candidate for the elections. Seraphine was losing power and all the tax money, so she decided to hold a revolution. She rallied the community, to unite against Dante. She led the charge from behind the scenes. She allowed a member of the community to be mayor along with 5 of his ministers. But after that, the candidates went back to normal. We supported her for this revolution. We were tricked by her to take back her power in office. And it's absurd that we just let her do it. Until Finnegan came, this seemed pretty ordinary, until you realize that he has a PhD in agricultural and forestry and a master's in applied mathematics. This master's in applied mathematics means that Finnegan must have crunched the numbers to realize Seraphine was rigging the elections. Additionally, he ran statistical analysis to prove that there was no way that these elections were indeed randomly selected. When confronted with this information, she had no choice but to spill the truth and make Finnegan a mayor to silence him. Speaking of silence, what happened to the first mayor of Hypixel Skyblock? Mayor Faith. She knew too much. Seraphine made sure to strike the fear of God into her and banish her from the elections and the entire game for all we know, because Seraphine wanted to get rid of all faith in a better future. We cannot control the mayors because they are all run by her, but this is not true. We must find our faith. We must return the mayorship to the common people. We must unite again to take down Seraphine. Viva la revolution! Now that this information's out, it's only a matter of time before Clerk Seraphine silences me. Please, subscribe. You need to subscribe before she finds this video. Please, before she realizes what's going on.